Hello, everybody. Welcome to SBI's Reigniting Small Business podcast. I am Patrick Lee, and I have with me today a guest. This is Tamikas Shelton from Employ and Relate. Tameaka, tell us about your business and what you do.
All right. Thank you for having me. My name, like Patrick said, is Tamikas Shelton, and I am the owner and senior consultant for Employ and Relate. And what we do is basically provide human resources opportunities or human resources strategies and opportunities for different businesses. That meaning like HR means a whole lot of things for different people. So whether it is writing your job descriptions, helping with compensation, helping with addressing employee issues, anything that has to do with people, that's something that we take care of at Employ and Relate. And we also have a monthly membership program that we promote so that small business, which is our key niche, small businesses always have a way to afford HR.
Okay. And there's plenty of things that we could discuss around HR and what you do, but that's not why I invited you on here today. We both talked about how we could bring a particular issue to light here by talking about our experience with this and what happened. So let me first start out by saying that there's the times that we are in are very interesting. You know, we have a pandemic going on. We have all sorts of different things happening. But the most recent is this whole social justice movement and the Black Lives Matter movement. And it's real difficult sometimes for business owners to distinguish between how they feel personally, what's going on in the world, and how they would react to that, and that professional sort of attitude that they need to always keep to the forefront. You know, what am I looking like? How am I appearing professionally, right? And we had a unique experience where we were able to enter into hard conversation. I mean, the race conversation as it relates not just to society, but from a business standpoint. I mean, this was a very interesting confluence of conversation that happened here. So I want to get to that story and then talk about what it meant. So let me set it up by telling everybody that Tameaka, as a client of mine, is part of my private advisory board network. And I have a private advisory board. And what happens with that is we bring business owners together, non-competing industries, who help each other solve business problems. And we do that once a month. They're good meetings. We go into a lot of business strategy. We do all that, but we also bond as a group, and we're there to be helpful no matter what. It can be personal. It can be business. It can be anxiety. It can be whatever it is. But we as a group are there to try to help each other. And the groups bond to the point where they get pretty trusting. And the way we start each of these meetings out is we do a check-in. We talk about how we're doing business personally, health-wise, and we chat about that. And so this last meeting of Tameaka's group, we had a plan. We had a business plan. We were going to bring Tameaka in. She was going to talk about her marketing efforts, her brand, her websites, and we were going to give her a lot of advice on that. And that's not exactly what ended up happening. Our conversation, when we got to Tameaka for her check-in, took a very different turn. So Tameaka, tell the story from how it went for you and what transpired.
So I was preparing that morning for what I was going to actually say when we do the check-in. And in the beginning of the meeting, we're giving a number from 1 to 10 to let everyone at the meeting know how we're doing personally, how we're doing health-wise, how we're doing from a business perspective. And I kept on thinking, I'm so sorry. I kept on thinking, oh my goodness, how am I going to answer this question? Am I going to tell the truth? The truth was that I wasn't doing so well. Am I going to lie? What do I do? Oh my goodness. How do I answer this question? Of course, we have so much going on in the world as it relates to race. And I knew that I was the only Black person that was going to be in this meeting. So I didn't know what to do. We were supposed to be talking about my marketing, my website, and anything I did at the beginning or the beginning of this meeting could set the tone for how the rest of this meeting was going to go for me and for everyone else on the call. So the point was, Tameaka, are you going to lie or are you going to tell the truth about your numbers? And it seems like it could be something so simple. No, every other time we met, it was a simple thing to do. Not simple. I mean, it's hard to come up with the numbers and to tell about them. But this particular meeting, when I knew that I was not necessarily in the best of places, it was difficult. And so what I decided to do, I call myself Honest Abe. I'm going to tell the truth, but I'm going to try to skirt around it a little bit. So what I was going to do is give my numbers, definitely give those numbers, give the right numbers, but just don't explain why I was giving those numbers. I wanted to just kind of slide in under the radar and hope that we could just move on.
And that did not happen.
It didn't happen at all. What happened was, so you're just going to leave us with those numbers and no explanation? Yeah, she just gave us the numbers and she didn't give us any explanations. And you know, the Home Alone look. Like, no, don't ask me about the numbers. And of course, I opened up Pandora's box and talked about why my numbers were so low. I believe it was a 3, 4, and 6, maybe. Yeah, as far as the numbers go, from personal business and personal health and business. And what wound up happening after that was something I wasn't prepared for.
So let me tell that story from my side of this, and then we can get into details. So when Tameaka started saying what was going on, she got very emotional, and basically, for you, Tameaka, it was that you were here to do what felt like, a very standard, what you were supposed to do approach of, I need to look at my marketing. But everything in you was thinking about how you felt in this whole Black Lives Matter movement, what you were seeing, your persona. You even said this to me, your persona on Facebook personally, what you were putting up around these issues was separate from how you felt you needed to behave with your clients and how that professional image needed to look. So essentially what I was faced with as a facilitator was Tameaka was saying this stuff, got very emotional. And so I needed to either try to dismiss what she was doing, right? Like she said she was going to skirt around it. I could have done the same thing and said, okay, Tameaka, you get a hold of yourself. We're going to move on to other people checking in, and then we'll come back to your marketing, right? But let's be honest, what use is that to anybody if the question that needed to be handled and discussed and what Tameaka needed support in was not that. What was that going to do for any of us? So I made a split decision that I was going to take my group, whether they were prepared or not, to have this conversation. And I will tell you that's obviously a risk, but it was I thought a necessary risk. We don't have the conversations that we need to have as human beings with each other on all sorts of issues. And here was an opportunity to let you say what you needed to say. And as you said, you're the only Black person in the group. I mean, you joke about that a lot, but I mean, there's this white membership that doesn't want to have this hard conversation, but I think they need to have it, right? So we went ahead and we said, okay, folks, we're throwing out our agenda. We're going to deal with this issue. And I want to give you a lot of credit and then let you explain where you went and how this happened. But thanks to you, the conversation was able to be had in a very productive manner because you approach this by being very brave, number one, but number two, by also putting it in perspective of not, let's talk about anybody else. You said, this is about what I'm feeling, what I need, and what I'm facing. And that's all I want to talk about here. I don't need to talk about how you all feel or what you all think you need or how you react to this. This is about me and what I'm feeling. So give us a little bit of how you entered into that conversation, sort of where it went, and what message you were putting out and what message you received.
So I want to say that first, I totally wasn't prepared for the level of emotion that I also shared, or that actually I just wasn't prepared. So I am crying, like not little sniffles. I am bawling as I tell everyone what's going on inside of me. I didn't realize this is what I needed to do. And I was just by the end grateful. In the beginning, embarrassed that with the amount of emotion that this topic, this subject, just it was like a nice volcano that erupted and just kind of, it wasn't a very dangerous, explosive volcano. It was just erupting, and then the lava was coming over and pouring out nicely, if there's a way to say lava is nice. But, what happened is I started sharing, and my truths just kept pouring out. And even though, Patrick, you give me a lot of credit for what I did and being brave, of course, from my perspective, I truly think that the group made a space for me, and the group provided an opportunity for me in that I was given the ability to talk and share honestly and openly, because of course we built rapport over time, and everybody listened. And I would say that listening allowed me, I didn't have to battle up against a lot of different, well, I feel this way, and there's reverse racism and all of those sorts of things. They listened and did not necessarily try to tell me all that they knew about Black injustice and race. So just having a quiet platform where people looked intense and like they cared about what I was saying probably made me cry even more, because that's not what I'm used to. I'm used to, yeah, that happened before, or that's not really what's happening, or yeah, but listen to what I'm saying. Now, of course, as we are a nice cohesive group and are able to talk about some things that maybe you wouldn't talk about in the normal workplace or in a normal professional networking group, there was a person in the group who was really touched by my level of emotion, and I'm sure also touched by or grappling with some internal things as this hard subject kept presenting itself over and over again on social media, on television, and now Tameaka in this group is saying these hard things, and Tameaka is crying and so emotional about it. So she participated by talking, but was basically inconsolable, similar to me. Not inconsolable. We were just crying very hard about everything. And as Patrick said, I did get to the point where, from a space of care and also openness, care for her and how she will show up for other people of color, I shared that I needed her to stop crying, and that it wasn't from a mean place. It's just that her tears would have made it so that I would stop sharing. Mm-hmm. And also something about, I would say, anybody crying, number one, we have a tendency as humans to want to console that person. I'm not without feeling. So of course I'm like, oh my goodness, she okay? Of course I'm crying too, but in my mind it's like, is she good? And what I had to realize for the first time on this particular, in this meeting, on our Zoom meeting that day, it's the first time I had enough of a mind at the moment to say, you know what? I need you to stop. But I could say it because I knew that I wasn't coming from, there was nothing that I was saying that was mean to her. I could get that that this was a touchy subject, but I knew that there was no pain that I was bringing. So there was nothing where, like you tell it, or like some boys are brought up, stop crying, when they're really hurt, or when they really have a reason to cry. So I wasn't coming from that space, and I want to be clear about that. What I was coming from is, hey, my connect, my sis, my, we're in a group together today. I need you to be there for me. I can't be there for you being there for me.
Yeah.
I need you. And so I need you to figure out how to get it together, because I don't ask for much, but right now I need you.
Yeah.
And that was an amazing thing. It was an amazing thing to say. And let me tell you, she tried her hardest. and my heart was in a place, when you have a networking group. Actually, this is beyond networking group. The way that our group is set up, it's not just networking, because we're not just talking business. Folks in the group care about you as a whole human being, which is a great way of bringing people together. That's how I like to do things as an HR person. Don't just leave your personal out there and not talk about what the foundation of a real person. So it wasn't lost on me that how hard she was trying. I saw her get off the Zoom a couple of times to get herself together. But what I appreciated is that she respected me enough to try to do just what I asked. And that was be there for me. And I truly, my respect for her went up greatly, because it wasn't an argument. I had to share, look, I share some hard stuff, and I'm in my space of mourning or being upset. It would be no different than, let's say, if you had somebody who was struggling with a diagnosis of cancer, and you had to be there for that person and figure out a way to be there for them, and that they don't look at themselves as a victim. You want them to feel empowered, like they can do this. I needed her to show up like that for me, because I don't want to be victim. I want to get out of victim, and I want to partner with my people who are not of color so that we can get out of this mess, so we can put away victims, so that we can move beyond having to talk about racism and prejudice and privilege and all of those sorts of things. Of course, that came with some things that we had to tackle, like some of the definitions and you know, the defunding the police and what affirmative action planning is, and I was challenged during this discussion that I wasn't prepared for. I was challenged, but challenged in a way that was still respectful, and just kind of like, well, tell me this, Tameaka, uh, that sort of situation. And here's the thing, I also hurting, sad, overwhelmed, needing the platform, needing white people to partner with me and be there for me. I also had a choice. Do you continue to go down this path that you've been seeing on Facebook as a advocate for change and trying to build bridges and fill gaps where there are communication gaps? Do you continue to go down this path of, I'm not going to tell you, you should know already? Or do you answer the questions when you're being asked? Now, I can't tell you that I'm always in that space of being patient. What I can tell you is, when we had our group, there is mutual respect. And I believe I know that we all come to this group for one another's best interests. And that if somebody in this group is asking me a question, it's because they feel like they don't know the answer, not because they're being trite or trying to point out issues of mine. They're really asking the question. So am I going to help her? If she's asking, am I going to help him if he doesn't understand? Well, absolutely. Because this is the space that we learn and support one another. And then we go out and do our thing as business owners. Well, I have a message that could help one of my CTT members. Why wouldn't I share?
So it was interesting too, because she ended up being a large part of the conversation as you two were talking about that. But anyone who's in one of my groups knows that nobody gets to be quiet about anything. Everybody is going to be involved at some point. So at a certain point, I went around and started polling folks who had not chimed in and said, how are you feeling? How are you uncomfortable? What are you thinking? What reactions do you have? And it was interesting to hear some folks. One gentleman said, well, as soon as Tameaka started talking, I knew that this was my time to listen, that I may have opinions about what's going on, and I may have thoughts or whatever, but as soon as she started talking, I knew, I'm going to be sitting here for the duration of this meeting, and I need to tune in to what Tameaka's saying and try to understand where she's coming from. And I thought that was a well-said piece. Sometimes conversations don't have to be give and take. Sometimes there is a listener and there is somebody who has something to be understood. And it was really surprising to me that folks were able to take roles in this conversation as unprepared as they were also for it. As you were unprepared, but they weren't expecting this either. How they were able to take those roles and do it constructively. It never felt like the meeting was not constructive. And for me, that's incredibly important, because I feel like, especially in the current culture's extremely partisan approach to almost everything, that we as human beings can have these conversations. We're capable of doing it, and it's probably far more necessary right now than ever. But there has to be a space for it to happen, and there has to be a challenge for it to happen, and we've got to lean in when it does happen. Mm-hmm. I was struck because here's where my day went after. So the meeting, I was supposed to have this meeting. It's supposed to be about 3 hours long, 3.5 hours long. We blew past the timing of the meeting. And then after the meeting was over, I was not comfortable just saying, okay, everybody, that was really interesting. Bye, see you next month. So I felt this was one that required some calls to everybody. So I called everybody who's been part of the meeting, including you. And I ended up having long conversation. I mean, I think we spoke for like another hour and a half. I spoke to some of the others for like an hour or so, and then some only 20 minutes or so, but everybody was still talking, and it was very worth those secondary conversations. I mean, we not only we start the conversation, we started the conversation for some folks. Like, we're going to dive in here. What was most interesting, though, to me was when I spoke to you, I had no idea if you were going to come out of that feeling positive, or if that you were going to be embarrassed, like you said, or if this was the bad experience. I didn't know where it was going. But when I talked to you, I was like, wow, because you were like, that was great. That was the best thing ever. Talk about that, because that reaction surprised me, honestly.
Yeah, it wound up being, now it wasn't the best part of the day, because it was a 3.5 hour meeting at the beginning of the day with a whole lot of tears and emotion. So it was a hard way to start the day, but it was one of the best things that ever happened to me. I did not realize, again, how much I needed to talk, and how much I needed to hear from white people who have my best interest at heart, and to just be heard and validated. And for the gentleman who was on the call who said he felt like it was just his time to listen, I'm like, whoa. It was almost like, like, this does not happen in life. Like, it became like, I couldn't stop telling people who were Black, like, you'll never believe what happened to me. White people were listening to me, and they allowed me to just kind of talk and tell them, and it was it's the weirdest, best thing that ever happened to me as a person, and definitely an HR professional. I kind of felt weird, because like, man, Tameaka, this is what you needed. This was what I needed. And I'm so glad that this was my group. This was definitely, it touches me way down deep, beyond anything that I can express. The healing that just, I'm not going to cry right now, but just the healing that I needed, and it just is beyond anything that I could ever imagine. Just to hear and be able to talk and not have to fight to be heard was one of the best things as a professional, and to still be looked at as a professional, even though I'm hurting and have emotions, and not being considered an angry Black woman, and not being put in my place, and all of those things. It is amazing.
So what I would like to do in the future is, there's a lot of pieces to this, and to unpack them all, we don't have time or ability to unpack them all right here and now. But you come from a unique perspective too, because you're in demand specifically to address some of these issues for the business world. And I think that I'd like to have you on again on another podcast, and talk more about functional approach versus this particular feeling and where we came from on this issue here.
Mhm.
But to sort of wrap up this part of the conversation, and I want to hear your response to this too, but the reason I really wanted to do this podcast is we have to find ways to have these conversations meaningfully. And like I said at the beginning, not talking to those who already understand us or are part of where we're at, or we know what their reaction is going to be, but to talk to folks who we don't know where they're at and they don't know where we're at. Those conversations need to be happening. And we had the opportunity for it to happen. And I just wanted folks, I'm not necessarily even telling anybody how to go about doing this yet, but I wanted them to hear that it can be done with positive outcome for everybody concerned. And I need folks to think that way, because if we're going to make progress socially and as folks interacting under a common set of ethics and behaviors and common understandings, we've got to talk past a lot of the assumptions we have. So I'm going to give you the last word on this. What say you to what I just said? How would you go about doing anything with that?
So I would just say, on a small scale, number one, amen to what you said. We have to have the conversations. They're very important. And I realize that there needs to be a space of respect and being able to be open. I would say that listening more than talking right now is very important. And, you know, I'm listening to you. I'm listening to people all the time just to try to hear, how do we bridge this gap? How do we open up this conversation? And really, I think it takes people like you, people like the people who were at this particular meeting, who are willing and open. But here's the thing, there are people who aren't willing and open right now. We don't turn our backs on those people who aren't willing and open. We have to be there in order to make a difference. So if we're not there, they're never going to be open. They're never going to get their minds changed. They show them through how you behave. Show them through your talk, your walk. And in the meantime, of course, we have HR people such as myself who are working really hard to put together trainings and the like to actually address this, because it is a thing. Black people knew it was a thing, but now everybody's knowing it's a thing that needs to be addressed. So let's work together to figure out how to do it. We need our non-persons of color. We need you. We might not know how to say it right now, but we do.
Thank you very much, Tameaka, for being open about this, for coming on to discuss it. We will definitely invite you back on for some more around this. I know it was emotional for it to happen. I'm sure there's a little bit of emotion today too. So listeners, I endorse what Tameaka just said. I also would like to wish you all a happy Independence Day weekend. Please tune in next Tuesday for our next podcast. And once again, thank you for being on, Tameaka. Thank you all for listening and joining, and we will see you next time. Bye, everybody.
Bye.